All right, so let's start with the review of the minutes from August. Any issues or corrections to those minutes?
No.
Okay, we're good to go. We will adopt those um, as submitted. So I asked just before everybody joined when who was presenting the employee handbook updates, and it's going to be Julie Fraley, and I think she's going to, if I'm correct, Mel, she's going to log in around 1:45.
That's what she told me.
Okay, so let's do the comp report, and maybe we'll get into the restitution report before we have to sort of break and deal with Julie. But yeah, let's see how far we can go um, before that happens. So who's doing comp?
So that'll be me.
Great.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. And Mel, have you already granted me permission?
Yes, I did. Go ahead.
Awesome. All right. Well, 1 second while I get the screen pulled up. All righty. Is everybody seeing the August board report?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Mel, for confirming. All righty. So taking a peek here, looking at the left-hand side, we're looking at the cash disbursements by crime for August. So for the month of August, the top two areas where we spent the most money was aggravated assault with about 12,000, and then homicides with about 9,100. We did pay a total of 37 payments for comp claims and a total of 4 for sexual assault claims. Total for the month was about 38,000. Any questions on this left-hand side before we move on? All righty. So talking about the disbursements by service type, you can see for the month of August, we had quite a bit of spending in the rent/relocation side. So that was roughly 11,500. And then medical facility, we paid a total of about 8,800. Any additional questions on this one before we move into the year-to-date? All
I just
right.
have a quick clarifying question, Maria,
Yeah,
because I'm not afraid to say I need to learn.
sure.
Your numbers are based upon the charge that has PC and not based upon any ultimate conviction. So when I see all the ag assault, I'm getting back, when I see all the ag assaults, that's what it comes in as to you, but it's not what it is maybe settled as.
Yeah, great question, Jen. So it would be based on what we have PC for. If we have not yet established probable cause, then it would be what the survivors reported that the crime is.
Okay, just wanted, I knew that was going to be the answer, but I just thought for point of clarification, because when you look at the different numbers that BCIC comes up with or DOC, it's very different in terms of what we see. So I think that's an important disparity that probably should be elevated in terms of them making policy. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just add also to that, when we are assigning the crime type, we can only choose one. So it is possible that we may have PC for several different crimes. But for example, if we had PC for a domestic assault and then also disorderly conduct, then we would mark that the claim was domestic assault. And you might not necessarily know that there was that disorderly conduct piece as well.
Do these other agencies not use probable cause for their analysis?
Is there a specific agency that you're posing the question about? I'm not.
The ones that Jen mentioned.
Like the Vermont Criminal Information Center will report on often just convictions, or DOC will report on convictions. So one of the things that has troubled me is that often in the plea negotiations, that behavior that initially was, and Susie's nodding her head, like initially was a lot more problematic, is being pled down. So just, trying to think about how we can be mindful of that. Again, I'm always thinking about policy making, because other folks, state's attorneys might rely more on convictions than on the charge that comes in. So that was my concern, is how we capture data across the board, and there's no consistent way of doing it. Which is to say that comp is great, because comp just says like, got PC for the most serious thing, that's what we're going with, but it gets changed as it goes through the criminal justice process.
Thank you, Jen. So moving then on to the year-to-date, for the cash disbursement by crime, from July 1st of 24 through August 31st of 24, that's our current fiscal year. You'll see that we had paid the most by crime type for homicides. Thus far, it's about 15,000, followed by aggravated assault, which would be about 12,600, and then domestic assault was about 11,300. Any questions on this side before we move into the expense type? All righty. So moving over onto the right-hand side, still for this current fiscal year, we have to date spent about 11,600 on rent/relocation, a total of about 10,500 on funeral expenses, and then about 9,300 on medical facility expenses. Comparing that to the prior fiscal year, you'll see here that we've got July 1st of 23 through August 31st of 23. We spent the most in the prior fiscal year in the aggravated assault crime type, spending at about 17,900, followed by domestic assault, 10,300, and then homicide, 9,900. Moving over to the expense type prior fiscal year, we spent the most on medical facility invoices, about 16,000, followed by counseling, which was about 6,800. So that's the capture where we're at to date. Any questions on the prior or current fiscal year calculations?
Thank you, Maria.
You're very welcome. So I'll go ahead and close out of this one. 1 second while I get our crimes by county pulled up.
I am glad to see that more people are accessing counseling or being told by the victim advocate that that is a service that's available. It's good to see.
Yeah, definitely. We're hoping that the raising of the cap will also kind of bring in some new faces in terms of providers, and hopefully some renewed relationships with existing.
Is there any way you can track that, Maria? Maybe obviously not within the next month, but over the next 6 months, to see if we're seeing new faces coming in as counselors, or is that a possibility that we can even anecdotally look at what that's resulted in?
So that's a great question. I know that Kiki has established a spreadsheet to kind of track notification to providers of this change, but in terms of whether or not we're tracking new providers, I think that may be a piece of that, but maybe Kiki can speak to that. Or sorry, Carol can speak to that.
You're muted, Carol.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute and I kept clicking on it. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think that we, based on the spreadsheet that we just developed, we would be able to potentially track new counselors that we've never worked with before. Um, so I think like we could look in like a few months to see like what we could add a new category to it to see indicate that they're new with the working with the program, so we could track that.
And I will not say anything ever again during this meeting. Thanks.
Interesting point. So go ahead.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Jen. It's all good
Yeah,
info.
absolutely.
And thank you, Carol, for jumping in.
Sure.
Is everybody seeing the claims by county for August on the screen? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So looking here for last month, August of 24, we can see that we received a total of 33 compensation claims, with Chittenden County being the highest number of claims received. And we received 0 claims from Addison, Caledonia, Essex, and Grand Isle counties. Some of those are known for lower numbers. In terms of the prior fiscal year and current year, for our claims for the month of August, current fiscal year, you'll see is 33. Comparing that to the prior fiscal year, it does show a 26.67% decrease in the total claims received. And then total claims year to date for the current fiscal year is a total of 68. Comparing that to the prior fiscal year was 73. So that's a 6.85% decrease in compensation claims. And then moving on to the sexual assault program, last month we got a total of 12 claims. Looking at the prior fiscal year, that was 32 claims, so that's showing a 62.5% decrease. Also comparing the prior fiscal year and the current fiscal year, that too is also showing a decrease of 36.17%. Any questions on this form before we move on to the year-to-date? All righty. And year-to-date, this is just highlighting year-to-date claims received from each county. It does kind of reiterate some of the information on the previous chart. But opening it up for the final questions, if anybody has any.
Thank you again.
Alright. Thank you so much, guys. I think that's everything for the comp board reports. I don't know if you want to dive into RU or something else.
What do we do? Should Michelle, you want to do your report now? Doesn't look like Julie has gotten here yet.
Yeah, I think mine will be somewhat quick if we want to do that, and then Julie can go on after. Okay. So you should be seeing the August RJO report.
Yep.
So in August, we received a total of 97 restitution judgment orders statewide. About half of those, or maybe a little bit more than half, came from Chittenden County, so 52. So they definitely exceeded what is normal for that county. However, I do want to point out that 16 of those all came from the same offender. And then there were other offenders who had multiple RJOs as well, but definitely 16 is the most we've seen for one person in quite some time. Grand Isle had 1, so that's good. Usually there's 0, but everything else was sort of as expected, typical numbers for each of the other counties. Any questions with any of that? the next one. So you should be seeing the restitution board summary. So last month, in August, we brought in just over $50,000. So that did exceed our goal by about 2,300. So our monthly goal was 48,000 each month. So again, exceeded that by a small chunk. In addition to that, we received just over 17,000 in tax offset money. So that's still a pretty good chunk for this late in the year. So that's good to see. So far, so for in August, we paid about 30, just shy of 36,000 to individual victims from our fund. So again, that means we were able to advance that chunk of money, just over 83,000 so far for this fiscal year from the fund. So again, pretty strong numbers. And what's interesting is the non-fund collected payments. So those go to individuals who weren't eligible for a fund advancement or businesses and state agencies. So year to date, that is pretty much identical to what we've advanced from the fund. So again, that's not usual. Usually those non-fund ones tend to be much higher. So that's, again, an interesting thing. We did pay out a bunch of home improvement fraud cases in August. So a bunch of cases were about 5,000 each. So that definitely bumps that up pretty quickly. And then otherwise, we paid a total of 356 victims in the month of August. So that was a pretty decent chunk. Usually it ranges between like 180 and like 270. So 356. Again, a little bit higher. Part of that is due to Shannon being out sick for quite a while. So some of those payments should have gone out the month prior and just kind of got delayed a bit. Any questions? Okay.
Well, Julie's here, or we can do a financial report with Carol, whatever you want to do.
Is Carol here?
Yep, she's hiding. I'm not hiding, I'm giving you company now. Do you want to come over here and run this thing?
I was keeping Mel company.
From the corner.
Hey, I'm the only other one in here.
I know. Oh, well, yeah, you
You
can
wanna
share.
go?
No, go ahead. You just have to go up. Do you want me to? There's financials.
Got it. Oops.
Oops.
Gee, that's mouse.
You gotta hit.
Okay. All right, so where's your share button on here?
You gotta close this, yeah, minimize it, and yeah, you have to. You gotta go back to click see where the dots, no, don't hit end, click right in there, just bring that screen, but click it. Just click somewhere and then hit the share button.
Okay, let's do that.
Carol's used to doing this from her desk, there it is.
Yeah, but I hide. All right, here we go. Boom, right there.
There.
Now we should be sharing. Okay. So can everyone see this?
Yeah.
All right, so the first thing, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Maybe not. As big as I'd like. So let's see, I want to get on special fund receipts. I should be able to make this bigger.
That's as big as you can.
Let me go a little smaller though. So.
Oh, okay.
All right, how's that? Can everyone see that?
You can move Bob down too. Just slide it down. No, well, you could drag, not with that, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'll put it there.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in August.
We can see it, but we can't see DVSB completely.
Yes, I'll scroll over to that. Thank you, Jen. Basically, it's early in the fiscal year, but what we are seeing is that, again, this is our 25 appropriation year-to-date revenues. The amount based on those two figures, the amount that's been collected, the percentage of the fiscal year complete. Again, it's too early to scare everybody, but this is essentially what we're looking at for revenues, meaning if it continues at the current rate, we could see estimated revenue balances of about a negative $500,000, and you can see that with restitution. And then I will scroll over and you can see that we're looking at about 120 for the DVSB. What's interesting though, is that again, when we look at July and August revenues, we are seeing that they are up from last year. So we are seeing some increases, which is good. That's what we were hoping to see. We're hoping that that extra $3.75 would, be showing up. So we are seeing that. So I'm hopeful that this trend continues. Then we can look over restitution again, the month of July, not as much revenues as the prior fiscal year. And then in August, an increase, and that's kind of what we're seeing in the DVSB fund. Now, keeping in mind that both the special compensation fund and the DVSB fund, we should be seeing increases in revenue because of that $7.25 surcharge that was supposed to go into these two accounts. So again, that's what we're seeing. We'll continue to keep an eye on that and monitor this. Cash, let's see, expenses. Usually I like to just jump to the fund balance, that. So what I generally try to do is narrow it down to a few items. And of course, this is available for any and all staff as well to review. But what we're always looking at is what I talk about is our checkbook balance. Where did we begin? How many revenues did we take in? What were our expenditures? And where did we end as of the end of August? As well as just revenues to expenditures on a month-to-month basis, and then the appropriation to the expenditures. So what we're seeing for the most part is with comp, it can be a matter of the fact that we paid out grants in July. So oftentimes you'll see a little higher expenditures in those quarters that we pay out grant funds. Again, we're seeing these numbers across the board. Don't panic when you see this one. It's just a drawdown date. So whenever we have drawdown quarters, you're going to see that. But again, this is what we monitor. This is why it's so important to have these board reports and to be able to hopefully project what we're seeing overall. So that's really what I'm looking at. Comp by type, similar to what Kiki showed, or Maria, I should say, is again, our numbers are slightly off, meaning that what Maria presented, I think, was around 37, and what I'm showing is around 32. Recently, we just had an OCFO and an OJP site visit monitoring. So our federal funders came and visited us. And one of the things I'll be working with Kiki is so that we're kind of having the same numbers. There's a posting date. So I've always said in prior meetings, board meetings, that my numbers are the true numbers. And what I mean by that is I use the numbers that are posted from Vision, the state of Vermont's payment system, so that it's actually payments that are made during a particular month, where Kiki and Comp's database may not always reflect the exact payment dates. So we're going to try to work together to make sure that going forward, the numbers match. So that's our next to-do project. Just again, it's just a dating thing. Everything has to flow through Vision. So we'll just kind of narrow that down. Any questions?
When she says Vision, she means the state's database that we use to
Accounts
pay
payable,
things.
not, yeah, system. Any questions? Hearing none, I'm going to stop sharing. Sure. There you go.
All righty.
You can drive it in.
Julie, you prepared to take us through some of these changes?
Julie, you need to unmute.
You've received just a quick summary. There's 3 changes to the handbook. Typically, we revise the handbook in July. We're a little bit late this year. 2 of those were recommended, I believe, by Jean for grantees and subgrantees. One of them was the identifiable, what's it called? Personal identifiable information, and that is if for any reason any of the staff or anything in the agency's personal identity information were to be breached or there was a possibility of it, what we would do, and that was to follow the guidelines of the of the AG's office process for that. The second one was we had in our last handbook, mostly it was a use of drugs policy. The recommendation was to add and be more, provide more information for recovery and what guidance we would give for both drug and alcohol. So that was updated. And lastly, the use of CTO upon termination, where people have accumulated quite a bit of CTO and would say, oh, I'll give my notice September 1st, but I'm going to spend the last 3 weeks on vacation because I want to try and use up my CTO, and that would not be permissible nor approved unless it was a particular circumstance, and that would be only approved by the ED.
I have a question about substance use. Can you tell or expand on that a little bit?
In the handbook, it was a little bit more detailed information about if someone does have a substance abuse problem, that we would provide them with some guidance and counseling. And for that, we would refer people to our EAP program. And the other piece that we sort of caught in there is that the use of marijuana is legal in Vermont. And even though it's legal, Vermont law allows us to not permit use or under the influence in the workplace. So we added that to that as well.
That's good. Thank you.
And Bob, this is something that, if you recall, there's a quick sign off by the chair of the board for the handbook each year. And I would forward that on to you.
I remember that, yeah.
Any questions?
Any questions for Julie? Any board members have questions?
No, it's good.
If not, is there a motion to adopt either 1, 2, 3, or all 3 changes?
I'll make a motion to adopt all 3.
Susie got to there first.
Is that a second, Susan?
Yeah, second.
Okay. Right. Any further discussion?
No,
If
thank
not-
you, Julie.
Yeah. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Unanimously passed. Thank you. Thank you, guys. That brings us, I think, to maybe Jennifer's report. Let me reopen the agenda. Yes, center update.
I'm trying to decide which one to go with first. One is a logistical piece, which is our annual meeting. So I think I'll stick with that, which is all of a sudden we're back at it, and was talking with Mel about whether our next board meeting should be our annual board meeting. So wanted to, that's on October 16th, as I believe.
No, October 21.
Okay, October 21. Sorry, that's why I look to Mel. I'm looking at Mel right now on my screen. But we do need to hold that, as you all know. Again, suddenly it's upon us. So is that something that the members here would be open to participating in, just extending our, well, maybe not even extending it, but allowing for that to be more of an annual meeting. And then if there are any comp claims, we would obviously not do those during the annual meeting.
Sure,
Fine
sounds
with me.
good.
Sounds
Fine with
good.
me.
Yep.
Then I have to just state my admiration for the people that I get to work with, because we went through it's not an audit, as I said, it's a review. But it was a really intense week last week. And I just want to specifically acknowledge Carol Brochu, Carol Morgan, and Jean and Christine for the amount of work that they put into this and the amount of work that they have to continue to follow up with. I'm so proud of the team that I get to work with. I don't know why Carol Brochu still works here, and I know she's here. But the amount of work that each individual person does for the center and for the state of Vermont is truly incredible. And you know, I just can't thank them enough. I'm so proud to be here working with them. So that was a process. It was my first rodeo going through this. And again, they kept saying it's not an audit, it's a review. And I was like, no, this feels like a horrible, horrible 4-day week for everybody involved. Jean made a quiche. She probably shouldn't have. That's what I said to Carol Morgan earlier. But I think it was really great. I think, we have some a few things to, get back to them and clean up with. But again, when I think about the fact that Carol and Jean are doing 267 sub-grants each quarter and what that involves, and I think about Carol Morgan and all she does with the program, we did well. And, it's tough working with people when they're coming in looking for something. And I think one of the issues we were kind of braced for was the fact that the person who used to be our reviewer apparently had never had any findings at all for any of his portfolio states, apparently ever. So we had a young person looking to cut her teeth, but we're ready, and it just, again, puts a little more stress on center staff, but we're going to rectify that with this next budget proposal to the administration. So on top of that, Carol's working on building our next budget. As you all know, VOCA is not in a good place. We're looking at a 40% decrease for next fiscal year. And I've said before, so much of that focus is on the impact on direct services. But when you think about that being our largest source of grant funds that we are able to receive administrative support for, that puts us in a horrible position where we're basically getting about $100,000 from VOCA to administer all of these different grants that go through VOCA. So the good news is that our budget analyst, our connection to the administration is very sympathetic. Carol and I met with him, and we have some suggestions for offboarding, creating a different way of doing victim services. He's very receptive. He's trying to brainstorm. He's right in the weeds with us as to how we can do things differently. Other states, Maryland's one of them, that they have like a basic, here's our state's commitment to victim services. We will definitely commit. In Maryland's case, it's $60 million to victim services, which is not what we're asking for, of course, but that commitment would be a bottom line, and that the state would use general fund dollars to augment, well, to take care of that. So it would just depend on the fluctuation from the federal grants. So in this case, with VOCA going down, as Carol has talked about with the administration and with myself, we need $3 million that's bare minimum. That's level funding. We need 3 million to just keep the doors open. And so the administration would commit to recommending, we will commit 3 million. And depending on what the federal funds are. So we're going to go in with that plan. That was encouraged as an option. So we're going to go in with that moving forward and see if we can do something in that nature to make sure that we know going forward, that Carol knows going forward that we have that, which is very important for a variety of reasons. You know, when I think about Carol, I think Carol having some certainty in her head when she can try and build a budget in the way that no other state employee in her capacity has to do. So, so we have that in October. Otherwise, we are, or I am working with some different legislative pieces. I meet with 4 members of the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday to talk about some things that they have going on and some things that we have going on. And then on October 16th, we will be testifying in front of the Joint Legislative Justice Oversight Committee on earned time or learn time and victim notification. Some of the other things that we're looking at right now are trying to consider when push forward a Victims' Bill of Rights, which would be a constitutional amendment. 39 other states have one. We do not. Any amendment to the Constitution has to start in the Senate, and little unsure of how that's going to look without Senator Sears there. Probably Senator Hashim from Windham County is going to be the chair. Sorry, Bob, but he's also under contract with the Defender General's office, so that's a little bit of an issue for many of us.
No, I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of concerning that he's getting paid by Matt Valerio, which I love Matt. You know that, Bob. I love Matt, but it's just a little odd. But we're working on that. And one of the issues that I'm really excited about is working on a towing bill, working closely with Representative Rachelson out of Burlington and with the Parallel Justice Commission and developing some relationships there in terms of the concern we have, and that's pretty much felt certainly in Burlington, is more predatory towing and the impact that we have seen in terms of victims. Because from our perspective, and this is an issue for Barbara more generally, is like the towing issue and all of that, but that what we in COMP see is that cars are stolen, or a victim of domestic violence has had their car stolen, or a car is seized as evidence in a crime and impounded, and that person has no access to their car. They do not have the funds to get their car out of that space. And so we're trying to work. I did not know that the towing lobby was so strong as it is apparently, but we're trying to work with the towing companies to see if we can carve out a small exception for victims of crime if they've reported the crime, for them being held harmless. This attempt has failed in the past because it was really broad, but we're hoping that if we can work with them about this small exception and maybe create some carve out from the Transportation Special Fund that would go to being able to support the towing companies for their expenses, that we might be able to hold victims harmless. So I'm excited about the potential for being able to move that. And Kiki didn't mention that they've got a training coming up with the Child Advocacy Center directors, the brand new ones, to try and give them some more information about COMP. So I'm excited about that. And that's pretty much it.
That's actually quite a bit for
Oh.
summer months. Yeah.
I have a question not really related to what you said, Jen, but where does the budget for the victims advocates around the state come from? Where does their
Well, for the ones who work in the state's attorney's office, that comes from the general fund now. The same with the Department of Corrections, that's a general fund appropriation that goes to the DOC. And then for the state police advocates, that comes from the general fund. So we've been kind of trying to be strategic about taking some space away from our special funds to fund what our state positions are. And Carol and I have identified 2 other positions that come from our Victims Compensation Special Fund that go to support network positions that we've already spoken with the administration are not appropriate to come out of our Compensation Special Fund, which is for victims of crime, not to fund positions. And they are supportive of that. And the network is aware of that, and they will just be adding that to their own advocacy. But, we shouldn't be taking over $50,000 out of our compensation special fund for positions that have nothing to do with victims' compensation.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Thanks, man. Anything else for Jen? If not, thank you, as always, Jen. Mel, do we have no guests or comments from the public?
Correct. There's no one here except us. So I can end the recording now.
And then we have a claim that we have to cover.
Right. So